very much for inviting me to this. And yeah, I would like to answer to the question. So I think the role of education in influencing climate action will be a catalyst for a real change. Education and schools can empower young people with scientifically valid knowledge, attitude, skills, and motivation to adopt sustainable practices, advocate for policies, and drive innovative solutions for a sustainable future. This also involves learning from each other about what we can do, such as adopting pro-environmental behaviors or sustainable lifestyle. And very importantly here, I would like to emphasize that recognizing and sharing our feelings at the safe school settings towards climate risks helps build empathy and a collective sense of responsibility among learners. It fosters a deep understanding of how these risks impact us all, and that would motivate meaningful action and solidarity in tackling environmental challenges. As a psychologist myself, I have been working on how climate change impacts our mental health, and especially for vulnerable populations, including children and young people. Climate change is already affecting both our environment and our well-being in so many ways. It's distressing to see the lack of progress in global climate action, especially for young people and children who are deeply concerned about their future. And yet, despite its growing impact on mental health worldwide, governments are still only allocating about a few % of their health budget to mental health. That's a huge gap considering the emotional toll this climate crisis is taking on people everywhere, especially vulnerable populations like children worldwide. So climate change is expected to escalate the situation, particularly in underserved areas, where the lack of effective services and the stigma surrounding mental health issues amplify the suffering of those in distress. Therefore, I believe that learning about climate change and what we can do and how we feel about it both need to be considered as a new normal curriculum and prepare educators and caregivers for this. And this is important because adults, including teachers, parents, and caregivers, often experience anxiety about climate change and related impacts as well. So we need to empower these people who will be guiding the next generation with the right knowledge and explain what type of actions we can take. And tackling these challenges calls for a well-rounded approach. So something like one that equips both young people and adults with the knowledge and skills to take action. So to build stronger and more collaborative learning environments, we need to integrate climate education into the existing school curriculum. But teaching climate change in schools would raise another fundamental question. So, for example, like, are we scaring children with these facts about climate change? Or, are we sure about what you are communicating to the children about climate change? So this kind of emotional effect cannot be neglected. So we now know many new psychological diagnostic terms have emerged in the last few years, such as climate anxiety, eco-griefs, solastalgia, that are often recognized in younger generations. That's why it's so important to develop smart strategies to help young people build psychological resilience. And up until now, many educators, researchers, and pedagogical experts are pioneering innovative methods for teaching climate change. So these innovative approaches encourage experiential learning, such as connecting students with scientists and also conducting group projects focused on pro-environmental actions like community cleanups or planting trees in their local environment. Such approaches must appear more and be facilitated via partnering between schools, community organizations, mental health care institutions, and local businesses. So with multiple stakeholders involved, we need to provide an open and safe space for children, teachers, parents, and other community members to share their feelings about the future of the planet, as well as learn about the climate facts and encourage collective action that would help mitigate climate change. So I believe that such safe spaces would create effective forms of community level and interpersonal support that are more relevant and empowering. For enabling such programs, preparing teachers and caretakers need to be considered high in the national education planning, because climate science and the knowledge about its complexities is overwhelming and rapidly expanding, and it's no surprise that the teachers and caretakers are not yet prepared to talk about issues with children. And as recommendations, the climate change is huge and overwhelming. There are so many uncertainties about its future impacts and how different regions and populations will be affected. So these effects vary depending on location and societal vulnerabilities. But if we recognize that the climate change is driven by human activities, we can understand that it is ultimately rooted in human psychology and decision-making. Ensuring that right to education is crucial in addressing this challenge. Digital media could be a powerful tool for young people to access information and knowledge. It provides resources on how to engage in pro-environmental behavior and connect them with like-minded individuals. These would empower young people to address climate anxiety and take meaningful action. But the climate change-related risks and events dominate the news and social media headlines almost every day. And they often affect young people who consume fear-based, distressing media content. Therefore, media outlets and media companies should be more mindful, framing messages with hope and actionable steps to empower children and young people. So this does not mean that we need to sugarcoat the climate facts. We should still present verified facts, but in a more sensible manner, and provide actionable notes if and where possible. And another concern is the filter bubble, where internet users are isolated within ideological bubbles due to algorithm-driven content feeds. For instance, young people interested in climate change might follow related social media pages. Such actions would lead platforms to display similar content constantly over and over, and that could potentially provoke anxiety or extreme viewpoints. So considering these potentially negative impacts of media, it's crucial for parents, educators, media companies, and governments to regulate climate communication as well as effectively support young people's access to age-appropriate climate information. Another important role that media plays is in exposing young people to news about government inaction on global climate issues. According to recent studies, many young people associate climate change with negative emotions, such as sadness, fear, anxiety, anger, and a sense of powerlessness. Around the world, large numbers of young people believe that most governments are failing to respond to the climate crisis in a coherent and urgent manner. As a result, many feel a deep sense of betrayal and abandonment, and not only personally, but also on behalf of their future generations. So therefore, once again, we should carefully consider how we communicate climate change to the audience, especially children and the young people. Because to foster community-level connections, reliable climate communication is vital. Such communication builds trust and cooperation among people, communities, NGOs, scientists, businesses, and governments. So we need to be able to promote open dialogues, addressing diverse viewpoints, and enabling meaningful exchanges. So some studies show that the population that trust their government to address climate change tend to have lower levels of concern about climate change. So therefore, I believe that every stakeholder can take part in this. For instance, community-based initiatives like citizen assemblies for climate action could provide a platform for discussing verified climate facts. This kind of a community-led approach could potentially foster trust among communities while sharing evidence-based tools as a part of lifelong learning to support their well-being during the ongoing crisis.